to get users comfortable to adopt AI agents, there are things that are sort of high return, low risk, like processing information, etc. Uh, and then you'll sort of have a crowning moment within the workflow where, say, if a refund needs to be issued or whatever. And typically that's where most businesses will shy away from using agent.
Hello, hello everyone. David here and Mounir. Mounir is running a company called Portia, which is an SDK for AI agents, and they raised a few $1 million, over $5 million so far. And yeah, today's interview will be an interesting one. Mounir has an extensive experience working at companies like Stripe, Google, but without having me share all the info about Mounir, I'll let him introduce himself here, and then we'll kind of dive into the actual interview after this.
Thanks for having me, David, and greetings to everyone who's joining us, wherever you are. So I guess brief intro about me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Portia AI, Portia, like from the Merchant of Venice, Portia, or from Children of Time. If you're a sci-fi fan, that's where we got the name. Um, and yeah, so I'm a computer engineer by training. I had my own little IT consultancy ages ago in Dubai in a previous life. An MBA from the London Business School. I've done a number of roles launching new business units, new products, always in big tech. So I was at Amazon, sort of guilty for bringing Black Friday to the UK in 2011, I think it was. I launched Google Pay in 30 markets during my time at Google, and I was most recently leading Bank as a Service in EMEA at Stripe. And about almost a year ago now, it doesn't feel like a year, feels like a lot longer, but also like a lot less somehow. Yeah, about a year ago, Emma and I, my co-founder Emma and I, who worked together at Stripe, quit our jobs and decided to focus on this full time. We just did not want to see this AI revolution pass us by without us trying to somehow leave a small dent, contribute somehow to it if we can. And we were super excited about this opportunity and about working together. And we came out of stealth about 2 months ago at this stage, and announced our funding, and are currently gradually signing up design partners and getting more developers trying the product out.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, sounds good. So yeah, tell us a little bit about like the product, like how did like first of all, like what are you building, who is it for, and what problem does it solve?
Yeah. So what we have built is an open source SDK for folks who want to build AI agents in production, with an emphasis on regulated industries. It can be used for anything. It's a horizontal SDK, but I'll talk through some of the features that make it particularly important for folks in regulated industries. So um, we spoke to hundreds of users and we tried a lot of the SDKs that are out there, and we tried some of the more sort of low code, no code options as well. Um, and what we got to, the conclusion we got from speaking to a lot of users is they want to be able to have preemptive visibility on what an LLM is going to do in response to a prompt, and some level of consistency in how in the course of action that it takes on certain workflows. And the second thing they want is this sort of real-time visibility into what what the agents that are dispatched to execute a workflow are doing, and the ability to interrupt them or to ask the agent to put their hand up when human input is required. Um, that's that same abstraction that we use to handle that human to agent interface. We also use so that whenever an agent needs to access an app or a data store, they raise a clarification to a human and ask them to authenticate them in. So if you think about API-based tools, that would be the provision of an OAuth token with the relevant scope based on what the sort of human grants them at the point of authentication. And if you think about browser sessions, it's basically the control of the browser session is temporarily handed over to the human who directly logs into the website, and then the session cookies and information state in general is passed back to the remote browser or headless browser session to continue.
Got it. Got it. Sounds cool. And so like what was like the trigger point to like, to figure out that like, there was a pain point there that you needed like human in the loop? What made you, decide that's like a key feature of your product?
It's primarily the having we call them execution hooks at this stage, but it's like having these hooks during a workflow
Hmm.
where to get users comfortable to adopt AI agents, there are things that are sort of high return, low risk, like processing information, etc. Uh,
Hmm.
and then you'll sort of have a crowning moment within the workflow where, say, if a refund needs to be issued or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And typically that's where most businesses will shy away from using agent. And so being able to bring in the human at these and bringing some deterministic controls into this, into the autonomy of the LLM and the agents to say when you hit these conditions, you stop and you ask a human to check what you're doing and give you the go ahead was very meaningful to users, and that includes the ability to handle authentication. Because specifically on the authentication example, David, or the authentication conundrum, if you don't do that, you have to do things like mirror permissions out of your apps and use those to try and control your agents. And it's sort of an awkward way of trying to solve the problem.
Got it, got it. So I was like peeking at your like at the investor website, and they mentioned that there's a essentially like they're referring to a death loop story. Um, it's a permission death loop that happens, especially like in enterprises. Can you tell us like exactly what fails? I think you kind of like touched on that, and like what does that mean for enterprise? Like, does it mean that they spend 6 months implementing agents only to realize that they're going to be running into some troubles, or like how did you figure out that there's like a big pain point that you can expand on and people are willing to pay for, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so we went, I mean, the entire industry, I will say, generally is evolving really fast. And so, like, this is just so that I'm not sort of tooting our own horn too much here. The problem that a lot of very good SDKs out there are doing a good job at trying to solve in general. Our specific uh, path to that was, again, in those conversations with users where we were like explicitly trying to get to the bottom of like you have some proofs of concept at the moment. Why aren't these in full-fledged production? And I can talk to the other issues that they mentioned, but definitely one of them has been I have a prototype for 10 people on my team. I'm not worried. But if I'm going to make some sort of an email data collection automation follow-up tool available, or let's say multi-agent workflow available to 1,000 employees all of a sudden, like I need to be sure that this thing does not send emails without the person's consent, and that when it does, it sends it in their name, and that I can tell that a particular plan run or a particular set of agentic capabilities are associated with a particular end user, like actual human.
Mhm.
And so those kept coming up, and so it became clear to us that to go to production, end user needs to be a first class citizen, like an actual primitive in and of itself that you can associate
Mhm.
with an agent, and use that abstraction to delineate and associate permissions, tokens, plan runs with a specific human, so you know who's basically dispatching the agent.
Got it. Got it. Sounds good. So I hear, I mean, I don't know. I mean, these are mostly, I think, rumors, and I'm not sure how far things have progressed, but I hear most of agent implementations are kind of stuck in the POC stage for most enterprises. Would you say that's kind of like true? Like, I think they say like up to 70% of agent implementations are kind of stuck in the POC stage right now. And then I'll have a follow-up question after
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. So yes, that is. I mean, we are definitely seeing that. I mean, we're in our case, we're very early. The design partners that we're working with are building for production. And so we're very lucky in that sense. So we haven't yet encountered, when I say yet, it's not like we have a gazillion design partners, but we haven't yet encountered a case where they build a POC and then shy away from doing more. I do think that part of it is, again, because the technology in general is evolving. So general LLM reliability is improving. Reliability was a concern. The the other thing with reliability is people are starting to build the right assurance processes and reliability processes. In the past, you used to check your code and have a few tests on it to make sure it's fine, and then you can sort of leave it. With LLMs, you have to have evals that are constantly running every time you launch a new feature. As
Mhm.
soon as you check your code in to make sure it does not create regressions in the way the LLM behaves. You have to do that across models as well. So these are all things that people are learning in general when it comes to reliability. We certainly are learning ourselves. And then part of it is things like when you move into doing something at production scale, you run into, for example, issues of memory, where if you start loading massive files in and out, or doing paginated API calls, you start flooding the context window or ballooning your costs because of output tokens, or just even if those things don't hit you, you'll have latency and performance deterioration as a result of the size of the data. And so knowing how to handle that is also collectively we're all getting better at, and I would like to say at Porsche we are better at.
Got it. Got it. Sounds good. And so I'm guessing you mentioned that you're targeting uh in some cases fintech or regulated industries. Like I'm guessing that has something to do with your background working at Stripe and Google Pay. Is like what like is there some influence there from your previous work experience, or like what made you focus on regulated industry specifically? Like what was the you know
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard for me to deny that there is like recency bias here, right? It is partly a function of a space we understand very well.
uh-huh.
By the way, for what it's worth, it's not specific to, I wouldn't say it's necessarily specific to fintech because we obviously have between me and Emma, who did a phenomenal job in her time at Charlotte Tilbury. So we also have like e-commerce experience that I think is relevant. Um,
Uh-huh.
but there is some level of recency bias there, and they are industries where the problems that we've hit on are sort of particularly important. But like we are in conversations with companies that do uh, other things in just in the general SaaS space, people who do data collection, anyone who needs to do onboarding. A lot of these call it natural language and human capital intensive tasks,
Mhm.
where the sort of upside of automation is high and the downside of occasional hallucination or the LLM doing something slightly offside is low because there's human checks and because it's not a sort of directly customer facing mistake necessarily.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, healthcare is a big one. I think the TAM there is like $1 trillion, at least
Mhm.
in the US. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how it is.
For sure, but,
I,
but but I mean, even in healthcare, sorry to interrupt you, David. Even in healthcare, which we should look at more on our side, right? But even in healthcare, we're finding that a lot of the applications they have they're never about the sort of get to the last bit where you give an actual diagnosis and some decision on medical care is happening, right?
Mhm.
And thankfully not at this stage, right? A lot of it is again in that sweet spot that I just mentioned, where it's like process notes, process some scans of a person and provide a preliminary diagnosis with some rationale, for example, to support and speed up the process that the actual doctor or nurse or care is going to follow, if that makes sense.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Tell me a little bit about like your go-to market strategy, because like you're targeting engineers, but it's like also like open source technology, as I understand. But like you mentioned design partners, like who are the design, like if it's not a secret, who are the design partners? And then even if you can't name them, maybe you can kind of give us some idea
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
what
So
your approach is.
it's a great question. So there is a there's an interesting tension between wanting to be open source, um, and also at the same time wanting to have some level of sales-led growth.
Hmm.
um, which is it's interesting. I mean, we think it was we think it's the right shape and the right GTM, but also it's stretching us in terms just based on our prior experience. We've not necessarily launched open source products before in our career, so it's like humbling. It's very interesting, but the tension is that you want to spend time on developer marketing because you want contributors, you want people to try this thing and to file issues and go on Discord and give you feedback and so on and so forth, which requires time to build that engagement and get and nurture that community of people who are giving you their precious time, right? And at the
Hmm.
same time, and remember, we're like a pre-seed company, right? At the same time, you want to spend some time like going through your network and looking at people who are relevant to talk to about what the product can do and doing POCs with them, etc. So like figuring out how you speak to both, whether it's across all of your marketing surfaces, your website, your GitHub README, etc., and splitting your time between the two is an interesting challenge. Obviously, not we're not the first ones to go through it, but to us,
So how like yeah, was there like any metric that said like we should focus on, like on kind of like the developer on the developers instead of like enterprises directly? Like was there something that like sparked your focus to go in that direction?
I think it's two. There's the two things that prompted us to have an open source SDK are the fact that, like generally speaking, with an SDK that is so deeply embedded in your stack as a developer, it needs to be
Hmm.
something that you have some level of control over and ability to customize and play around with. And so open source lends itself to that really well. But then secondly, the technology space is so nascent that
Hmm.
a lot of the other libraries out there have chosen to go open source because A, you're contributing to the collective, and B, in just a purely self-interested way, you're also learning from the collective and engaging with the collective as a result. And it's like, what's that expression? A tide that lifts all boats or something like that. Basically, um, it's mutually beneficial, put it this way, in terms of like learning and shaping the product and improving it. Um,
Got it. Got it. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, high tide lifts all the boats or whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
it
exactly.
makes
That, that one.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so if you're targeting developers, like what is like the secret sauce that I guess like promise them that they should use your product over competitors, and then like do you have competitors in the space right now like that are bigger or like someone that you're going after, but it differentiate like your product has like a clear differentiation from others basically, like
Yeah.
what would that be?
I mean, I should start by saying there are some very good SDKs out there. And there are some whose founders, I mean, I'm sure this will not be news to most listeners here, like Crew AI, whose like founder does an excellent job at sort of explaining what agents do, getting the like basically getting the industry to get familiar with the space. Has a lot, has a lot of presence and a unique brand himself, kind of thing, right? So like I'm like transparently, I'm a fan, even if we end up competing, and puts out very thoughtful content as well, right? So there are folks out there. We prefer to start. There's enough white space and enough opportunity, and we're all early stage enough, and the technology is evolving fast enough that right now the right thing to do is to work backwards from user problems and just obsess over that, as opposed to worry about what other people are doing. Um, the other thing is that in contrast with the example I just gave, you do have a lot of people who are putting snake oil and vaporware out there. And it's like, if you spend too much time worrying about what other people are doing, it's like a death by a thousand memes. It's not, it's very hard to tell what's real, what's a real product from what's a sort of one-off meme-worthy thing. So what makes a lot more sense is to just obsess over the user conversations and developer conversations we have.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, for sure. It's like, it's crazy. Like, there's, like, I feel like the AI influencers have made it sound like old jobs are going extinct. Like agents can run your companies. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, what are you seeing? Like, what can agents do these days? Like, I feel like they've maybe kind of come afar, come afar, or like come afar along, so to
Yeah.
say. But yeah, would love to kind of like hear what you think agents can do. As far as I understand, like, oftentimes they kind of come up short,
Mm,
anywhere between like 30 to 70% of the time, and that's where like technology like yours, I think, plays a part to help them kind of get it across the line.
mm.
But you tell me like what you think.
Sure. So I'll start by saying that I'm just a human like the rest of us, and so like anything I say here is hypotheses, speculation, and just sort of mainly just looking backwards at how other technologies have evolved and how AI is evolving so far. So it's the best we can do at this stage, I suppose. Um, what I would say is I would bet on something that Sam Altman said, actually, just to be clear. But like, I would bet on LLMs continuing to improve, not the other way around. Uh,
Mhm.
that's born in the data. If you just look at like white papers in the AI space, even like post the sort of attention is whatever that paper is called about like transformers and attention, GPTs and attention. You see that like the reliability continues to improve. The second thing you're seeing is that there's a specialization of LLMs where you get LLMs that are particularly strong at reasoning and do better than 70% at reasoning, and ones that are particularly strong at audio or video or tool calling and so on and so forth. Um, so I feel like my guess is they will continue to get stronger continue to get more reliable based on that. Um, and then the other thing that is happening at the same time is the reduction in the cost, in the unit cost of like servicing a query, right? And hopefully the carbon footprint of servicing a query. Um, and you see that with I'm basing that just on like the things I read about how uh, inference cost is going down, and there's like smart decisions on when you use a TPU versus a GPU. There's changes in the architecture of data centers, etc. And more speculative talk of alternative energy sources. So my guess is that those, again, this is a hypothesis. My guess is this is the direction things are taking, and LLMs will continue to get more reliable. Um, what does that mean for like the workforce? I think some jobs will be more impacted than others, and the general trend will be that people will, on average, operate at higher levels of quote unquote abstraction or cognitive activity in general. But I don't know what that'll create in terms of new job opportunities. If I look at the past, even something as back as like the days of as far back as the time of the Luddites, and when the Industrial Revolution happened, some jobs were lost, other jobs were improved and augmented, and new jobs were created. And you could make the same case when we moved from like massive mainframes to ERP, from ERP to SaaS. Um, so I tend to be cautiously optimistic, but I'm not under the illusion that like there won't be losers in this race. There will be, and the best we can do is ask ourselves the right questions and be prepared for the possible answers to them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the reason I even started this podcast, I mean, a little bit about me. I run a, recruiting and staffing company. Luckily, we focus on like the top tier engineers and stuff like that, so they're still in demand. But like, I feel like so many outsourcing agencies that focus on like doing like repetitive work, like, I hear like there's virtual assistant startups and stuff like that. I feel like they're very much in trouble. Like AI can take off a lot of that work even now, right? And then if things improve, it's only gonna get uh, I feel like worse. And so partially, like I said, the motivation behind this is like I want to understand like what's like what's the outlook for the future of work and whatnot. And so
Yeah,
I
I want to just give two concrete examples of like things that I think are changing and just one that is a change to what a role looks like, and the other that is net new roles, right?
uh,
Because that just might make it a bit less navel gazy and a bit more tangible for folks listening. So closer to home, probably for the audience of this show. I was actually chatting to an undergrad at UCL, University College London here, super smart guy. And the interesting thing is that in the interviews he's going through and the time he's spending in terms of building skills, he's spending a lot more time on product engineering. So like a lot more time on how do I, if I were to design a product, how do I design, or at least the given product specs, how would I design the engineering architecture under it? And so he's
mhm,
spending more time thinking about things like abstractions, what that means for the developers using it, what that means in terms of potential edge cases and support for future business requirements, as much as he is on like, do I know how to write Python? And he's finding that in interviews that serves him well because they're becoming more and more shaped like that for even for junior engineers.
mhm,
And this is where I think that you will start seeing a change in that particular like just general engineering roles with my
mhm,
limited understanding of what that means. On the other hand, roles that are like disappearing and completely disappearing, other roles that are appearing. You had this point where when we started having mobile apps, you had an entire new category of jobs. It was basically people whose job it is to like test your app in their market on specific devices. In my Google Pay days, you'd have to have an army of people in, I don't know, Poland who would take a bunch of different phone models and go and tap in a bunch of the biggest retail stores, for example, right? As a very simple example. That's an entirely new category of jobs that was created by the fact that you now have mobile apps and that you now do payments on mobile apps. In a similar way, and I know it's not always seen very well, but like people who review data annotation, people who do manual reviews of like what is an LLM responding and whether that's the correct thing, I'm bullish about that, like human quality check becoming
mhm.
like staying important. Because like if you need it for deterministic code, like a mobile app, why the hell are you not going to need it for a stochastic technology? So this is an example of something that I think, again, I'm speculating, will be new. So I like to be optimistic that we lose some and win some.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that makes sense. I just like I'm hearing crazy stories. My buddy worked at like a healthcare AI company, and they launched a new feature that automated some things for like the hospital industry, and then like literally like a couple of weeks later, they did layoffs specifically
Mm,
to a new feature
yeah.
that the company launched,
Mm,
and they laid off like a department of like 15 people that did like some of this like manual work of like data checks or like whatever it is they do, like the billing check. And so yeah, it's getting kind of crazy out there, but like overall I think uh there's a couple ways how this could play out. I think right now, like interest rates are high. Like I think a lot of companies are trying to save money, but I see a lot of people overwork. Like they're leaning into AI. Yes, they can produce more, but like somehow they still need to hire. Like it's the same thing for me. Like I was running this like podcast thing, and we're doing a lot with few people, but in order to for someone to manage the whole operation, like I still needed to hire someone, right?
mm.
And so I think it's going to be like leaner times going forward for sure. But yeah, it's on the topic of talent. Like how do you so like do you feel like you're able to do a lot more with like with the help of AI with less people? Like what's your personal experience there?
Um, I mean, engineers can probably speak to this much more than I can because, like, I mean, I'm an engineer by training, but I'm mostly at this stage a usurper. I have my own little project where I load our SDK and just do stuff that helps me be more productive. So what I can tell you is that our engineers and what I hear from them is with something like Cursor, precisely what I talked about earlier. They will think about the right abstractions and so on and so forth. And then when it comes to actually implementing it, it's a much faster process when you have something like Cursor at your fingertips or Open Hands or whatever at your fingertips. Speaking more from a business perspective and as a startup founder, um, in a lot of the SaaS products out there, every time I want to do something slightly automated and smart, I have to like dish out a 50 pound subscription or some shit like that. And so what I end up doing is I literally use Portia to do that job. So as a very simple example, yesterday I was on a panel and I have the list of the list of people who joined, and I sort of what I did is I wrote down that list. I think it's about 30 people or something, and I just gave it as a prompt, like plugged it into the Porsche SDK, gave it a superset of all of our tools, including the browser tool, and said like, I want you to figure out if me or my co-founder are first or second degree connection. If somebody knows them, I want you to tell me if they went to London Business School, because then I can use that in the intro to personalize it type thing. Um, and it like if I had to do that for 30 contacts, you can imagine how long it would have taken me. It took a plan run with Porsche about 5 minutes to do that. So that means that instead of using some CRM where I have to pay for a workflow that is AI powered to do this, I just did it myself. And obviously I have to pay for the LLM cost, but it's nothing in comparison. So those are like hacks and ways in which you are more productive by knowing how to use AI.
That's amazing. I mean, I was just about to ask you, like, walk us through like how, how Porsche works. But yeah, I think you kind of explained it there. Uh, is there like, like, would you say even non-developers can use it, or you have to like know a little bit of coding to pull this off? Like, how user friendly is it? And
Yeah. I mean, it's I suppose that like just I'm trying to be sort of as modest and self-aware as possible, if you will. I'm not a full-on non-developer, right? Like
right.
I'm good enough to write a bit of Python and use our SDK in various ways. Would I be able to write our SDK? Like F no. I'm not smart enough. But if you're like a full-on non-developer, there are a lot of very powerful prepackaged solutions like Claude, like ChatGPT. A lot of the CRMs are now also CRMs and other SaaS products are building AI capabilities within them as well. So like this stuff is more and more accessible to people. It's just if you're a developer, you can probably not have to pay for the UI and everything else. You could just go straight under the hood and talk to an LLM and prompt it in various ways and wire in your own tools. But
Got it.
ultimately, the functionality is available to everyone, I think.
Got it. Yeah, I was checking out like your website with like a few use cases. Like what do you see like customers or like your engineers using your product for? Like what are the kind of agents that you're building? I mean, you kind of gave us like a good use case.
Hmm.
Like I'm getting all kinds of ideas. Like for example, we use like a billing system that sends out invoices to clients based on hours work. So like I want to have like a good financial analytics of like our profit and losses. And so right now I have to pay extra per seat to like our software provider to do that, or I have to hire like for example, a bookkeeper slash or like a controller. They kind of come together and they send me like a report of all of this. Like, do you think that's easily doable by AI agents, like using your product? Like, should I kick this off to one of my developers and ask him to like, hey, set this up for me because like we're overpaying for seats,
Yeah.
or like,
I mean, I would be silly if I said no, right? But like realistically, you can. And I'm saying that because we have design partners doing exactly that, right? So like there's some who use it for automating generally like onboarding, data collection, KYC type things, just because a lot of that is like collect a bunch of documents, make sure that they are congruent with each other in terms of their information, check a bunch of like politically exposed persons lists and directories, compare people based on their profession with some public registries of, I don't know, solicitors and accountants and so on and so forth. All of that, there's no reason why with the right APIs, like tool wrappers around APIs or browser use, that you can't automate. And again, with the power with our SDK is that you can say, you can literally instruct the LLM and say, like, if the following conditions are met, this is something you can just go ahead, go forth and prosper, green light it, and do it. If anything seems even so ever so slightly on towards, raise a clarification to a human, give them your findings with the sources, and let them decide. And so all of a sudden, your onboarding queues dropped by 50% with very minimal risk, as an example. If you're doing data collection across the supply chain where you have to like email multiple people who have to email multiple people, um, an email agent that does data collection and can do so recursively makes that job a lot easier. You talked about billing. One of my pet peeves right now, I can't wait for Vincenzo to start. He's our founder's associate, so I'm going to give that to him. But we are building for a design partner, an agent that goes, you can point it to all of your accounts in various places where they currently don't have a way of delivering invoices by email,
Mhm.
plus point it to your inbox and ask it to collect all of your invoices between date X and Y. And so it'll go into the billing portals of a bunch of places, a bunch of software that you have, and it'll go through your inbox, collect all of those invoices, and upload them into your accounting system or send them to the email address of your accounting system so that I'm not having to manually troll through and collect them when I'm doing bookkeeping. So that's like, that would honestly save me a good, I think this horrible task takes me about 3 hours a month or 4 hours a month. That's gone.
That's yeah, it's crazy because then like all I have all these like questions about like or like some things are starting to make sense when like the CEO of Microsoft says that I think, agents are going to eat away at the SaaS pricing. And I think it makes sense because like if I want to do financial analytics for like the product that I'm talking about, I need to pay per seat. Like I think it's like extra $4.
Mm,
But it doesn't like why should it cost per seat? Like I'm just getting I'm paying for one report that should just cost like, like it shouldn't like the more people I have shouldn't cost more. But like if we were to implement this, I think, yeah, this would like reduce the cost by a lot. And so the next question that I have is this like I'm noticing there's a lot of agent providers or like, AI agent, yeah, like whether it's for, like a Twitter automation or whatever it is, and their costs seem to be astronomical. Can you like tell me like what do you know about that? And like, for example, using, I saw like a Twitter automation bot and they were trying to charge 20 some dollars an hour. Like, do those prices make sense or did they are they kind of like taking advantage of the hype and just ripping huge margins? Because like I look at your pricing and looks reasonable, right? Like it's like per execution or
yeah.
whatnot. Like,
So, I mean, just I should probably caveat, like, I write in a lot of these agents, at least in-house. This is more in the spirit of us eating our own dog food and obviously saving cost, right? So, like,
mhm,
testing all this functionality, etc. The way it is in our design partnerships, they would use our SDK to build these agent capabilities within their products. So one of the ones I mentioned to you is a sort of treasury as a service focused in particular on startups and early stage growth companies. And within that product, you have an interface that allows you to just do all of your bookkeeping in an automated way. Obviously, they charge that. They have a pricing model where they charge you for this alongside treasury and everything else they do. There's value in having stuff, all of it packaged in one place and maintained and supported, which I think is, the rest of it is just a dynamic of supply and demand. So, like, the more people offer these agentic capabilities, the less that becomes the differentiator that commands a specific price from that company or otherwise. Um,
mhm.
So, during that El Dorado, are they charging higher prices? I suppose they might be. It's hard for me to comment without actually looking at individual. But I think back to the very early days of SaaS, and I see the same trend, right? Or the very early days of closer to home, things like expense management companies that give you a card as a service and a treasury account as a service, and so on and so forth. Like, as more people do it, you have higher supply versus the demand, and therefore prices have to be more competitive.
Got it. Got it. So, as an example, like you mentioned, I don't know if you looked at the cost, but you mentioned, you set up an agent that, analyzed 20 contacts and, gave you the lowdown of like who you should reach out to or, what you should talk about.
Hmm.
What was the cost of that? Do you have like that off top of your mind? Just curious.
So that particular CRM, if I wanted to unlock that feature, I would have had to move up from the growth plan to the I can't remember what it's called, Pro plan or something like that, and it would have been
Uh-huh.
like 4x the cost
Uh-huh.
per seat, right? And I'm like, I
Uh-huh.
just need this thing, and I have an SDK that can help such companies build these automations in their products. So I'm like, F it, I'm just gonna try and write this thing myself, and this way I get to test our product. And so that's what I ended up doing. So I basically this morning tested it out, and it worked fine. I like uncovered a minor bug in the process, which is helpful for the team and will be helpful for anyone trying to use our SDK to build these capabilities in their products.
And do you have like a specific cost of running this agent? Like that you have an idea? Like, did it cost $2 or $10 or
Oh, I would not be able to tell you off the top of my head, but it's like insignificant enough that I didn't feel the urge to go and check. If you see what I mean, right? Like,
Yeah,
what is the cost per query? In my particular case, multiply that by, if you take into account some of the calls our SDK wants to make, plus the tools are going to make for each of those individuals I was trawling through. I mean, plus our, I don't know, the browser base subscription we have, like all in, it'll be nowhere near what I would have had to pay.
got it. Got it. Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, crazy times. We're coming up on time here. Like maybe like last question I can or wanted to ask you, unless there's something else you want to expand on. But like, I know OpenAI just opened an office in Paris. I hear, and I don't know if they're in London yet, but in they're in Berlin and they're paying like 4 or 5 times the salaries. Like, what does like? I noticed you attracted some superstars to your team. Like, is that like a worry, like OpenAI kind of snooping in on your talent? Like, how does the talent outlook look like in Europe and UK? Are people there running for US, or like, do you think UK and Europe are gonna emerge as a real big players in the AI race? Like, what's your thoughts there?
Hmm.
I guess there was a few questions
Yeah, 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 but
there.
that's okay. I tried to register them. I just finished my second coffee, so I think I should be good. But keep me honest. Um, on the first one, which is like being able to attract talent versus the sort of large US behemoths who are moving here and expanding their presence. Like inherently your target audience from a developer perspective, from a recruitment perspective, I mean, when you're at our stage is not the same one. And the types of things that people are looking for when they're open to chatting with us are not the things they're looking for if they want to go and work at OpenAI. There's some overlap, obviously interest in AI, though, but the the appeal that you get in, generally speaking, in a startup is that you get to move a lot faster, is that you get to work a lot more closely with the founders, assuming you value the founders, which I like to think our team does. You get to work very closely with them. You get to break things, and you get to deal with, you're much closer to where the rubber hits the road. So you get to really deeply think about and contribute to and witness, well, shit, are we designing the product correctly? Is our go-to-market motion correct? What's our business model? Levels of thinking and challenges peripheral to your day-to-day at times that are very interesting. And plus the potential upside that you get in terms of like equity, presumably. So So that's very different from what you would get in an open AI, is my point. The second point around like whether Europe and the UK will emerge as like big players and opportunities, and what do I see happening there? Obviously, this is a very biased perspective, but I think definitely that they are and they will. DeepMind was founded here. Pydantic AI is here. We are here. Mistral is here, and I could go on and on. There's a lot of excellent companies that are. I hope to be one of them, but there's a lot of excellent companies that came out of Europe in the past and will continue to come out of Europe. The US is a monolith of a market with 300 million people, so and with a certain risk appetite in general that's embedded in the culture that makes it attractive, in particular for founders. So you do see founders, especially ones that wouldn't have to like uproot an entire family to move. Always say that, oh, when I get to to Series A, I'm just going to move my headquarters to the US. So you do come across that, understandably, but
Yeah. Are you looking to move to US, or like what's like you're gonna stick in the UK?
I mean, I say no. I can't give you a definitive answer. We will have to follow the demand, but we would definitely like to keep a meaningful presence in the UK and in Europe because there's plenty of opportunity here. There's outstanding talent. I mean, we ran a hackathon in April, and I've like the talent was just outstanding. The types of stuff that they did with the product was brilliant, and not just across our product, across all the other stuff that folks did. So
Got it, got it. Well, okay, as a last question, like what, like if you're looking to grow, like what are you what kind of talent are you looking to attract? Like what's the culture at the company and stuff like that? I mean, maybe that could be the way we wrap this conversation up.
yeah, I'll go back to something I said earlier. Well, I'll break that down into two bits. There's the what you look for in engineers, and then what you look for in the rest. And my far more competent co-founder and CTO, Emma, can speak to the first one much better. But at least what I can say from a commercial perspective or product perspective is we generally debate things a lot as a team. We thrive on that, and we love people who will contribute to everything from the broader architecture of the product to like the strategy and business model that we're looking for to like there are no boundaries, right? Uh, and as a result, we will deeply value engineers who have strong product thinking and product engineering thinking. So they're anchored on like what type of end user experience, what type of developer experience does this create? What kind of business models does it open? And what does that mean in terms of how I design it from an edge perspective? In addition to having obviously fire in their belly and an urge to get shit done. When it comes to non-engineers, there's some, I guess if you were to go back to the first principles that apply to engineers as well, you want people who are willing to learn and take on new tasks and adapt really fast. Because in this AI space, it's all shifting sands, everything is new, and we as a startup, on top of that, generally need versatility. And I like to think that we're attracting people like that. Touch wood so far. So we've been very lucky to have the people we have on board. They're brilliant.
Sounds good, Munir. Yes, I think this is it. We're running, short on time. I know you gotta go. I'm gonna be promoting your product to all our engineers to tell them to check it out because like we need to stay on top of things. Like we have customers who are, like they used to ask us, they want to hire more engineers. Now they're asking us to build and help them build AI agents and stuff like that. So I want to personally like stay on top of like what's working, what's the latest, what's the greatest, and so like sounds like your product. We should definitely be testing it in house for some of the use cases we have, I think. And so I'll pass it off to some of our internal developers for the platform that
Amazing.
we've built for ourselves.
Amazing.
But yeah, so I'll again, like, thank you for taking your time today. We'll be sharing this episode on YouTube, podcast, and we're just getting started. Like, we have big goal to hit like 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and
Nice.
so hopefully a lot of people are going to be seeing your product as it evolves, as we evolve. And again, thank you for your time, and yeah, we'll be probably chatting in the future too, because like I said, the product sounds interesting, and I'll be sharing that as soon as we're done in our developer community for them to check it out too.
Thank you, buddy. We really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, it's like interesting for folks who've been listening. We try not to speak in absolutes and like pretend like we have answers to shit. We don't have a crystal ball. But we appreciate people giving us a try. We appreciate people giving us feedback, joining us on Discord, giving us a star on GitHub. We also have a YouTube channel where you can sort of learn the basics of the product. So, uh, for us to succeed, we will need that sort of feedback loop with developers. And so, any help on that front and support and engagement on that front is massively beneficial and welcome. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mounir.
Cheers, buddy.